everybody. Wow, Schmitty. Episode 96, the Bowfishing Buzz.
Absolutely.
Brought to you by AMS Bowfishing and
Megamouth Bowfishing as well.
Oh.
Not to forget our fantastic sponsors, End Designs Leatherwork and Embroidery, Efficiency Bowfishing Lights by Outdoor
That is
Innovations
right.
USA. We are back up here in the booth. It is March. It's getting more beautiful out by the day, and we are in good spirits.
It was 67 degrees here yesterday in central Wisconsin.
I think that's how excited I am. I can barely talk. I don't think you realize how you have like seasonal depression in the wintertime.
Yeah.
Everything's dark and cold.
Yeah.
And then you get a March day like yesterday. The sun is out. The time changed this last weekend. It's light out till 7 o'clock. It's 65 degrees, and it's just like,
The smell of boat exhaust,
oh my.
carp slime, blood, scales, Monster energy drinks,
Gas station sandwiches.
muddy water.
Oh my gosh, it's right there, ready for the taking.
Oh, that's what I call a little chihuahua.
I can't wait.
Oh,
I cannot wait. I can't wait. You know, it's like this time of year, it's like you get flipped into a mode, because I don't know about you, Matt, but even this past weekend when it was warm out, all of a sudden it's like, okay, I want to shoot some fish. Let's get to it. It's like that switch gets flipped, that weather gets nice, there's open water starts to happen more often in our area, at least up here in central Wisconsin. Don't get me wrong, I was ice fishing on 2 feet of ice this weekend, so
I was on the floor this weekend too. Yeah.
But there's areas that you can target fish now, and boy, I can't wait.
Right.
Cannot wait.
You know, we are very busy here, Schmitty, at the AMS Megamouth Mothership here.
Yes, absolutely.
In Stratford, Wisconsin. I mean, the Ringos, the Megamoths, the combo kits, the arrows, the retrievers are flying out the door like crazy. Something does tell me that bowfishing season is upon us.
Oh, absolutely. Tournaments are starting. We've got longer days.
Yes.
The sun is like we said, melting that ice. It's hitting our skin, giving us that amazing vitamin D. The fish are getting bigger.
And
they're
that
getting
exactly
ready.
right.
It's
because
just a great time to be alive.
The ones that didn't get shot last year, just like a whitetail buck and that you're always chasing, he's going to be bigger this year, Smitty.
I wonder what the stats would tell us. I wonder how much a 25-pound common carp grows in 1 year.
Probably a pound.
I would be curious to know that.
It would be very interesting, yeah.
A mature buck with good genes from 3 to 4 puts on 30 inches.
Yeah.
You know, if you got a good winter.
Yeah.
I'd
I'm
just be
quite
curious
sure
what
that
is.
a common carp grows rapidly his first 5 years of life.
Yep.
Really grows, then he starts to slow down, just like a big
big fish or a big muskie or a walleye. Yeah. Yep.
Speaking of buffs,
Oh.
Schmitty,
Oh, okay. Buffs.
you and I have this little bet.
Oh, of course. Absolutely. The biggest Wisconsin buff.
Biggest Wisconsin buff. The loser has to wear a dress
Yep.
on that next podcast.
The next pod. Yep.
I do have some stipulations.
Oh, stipulations. You and your stipulations. Okay, let's hear them.
I'm taking this from your book.
You are always trying to cheat and change rules.
No, you're the one that always, I'm taking this from your book of little rules and regs.
Okay.
So, you cannot shoot that fish with me in the boat.
What?
And you cannot fish my spots.
Oh. Okay, let's go on Amazon right now and buy a dress then. This ain't going to happen. What in the world? That was not agreed upon when we made the bet. No way. I do not agree to those stipulations.
You can't fish in my spots.
No, not only do I get to be on the boat with you, not only will I be in your spot, I might have you freaking draw the bull back for me.
I'll probably be recording
Probably.
it. Yeah.
You probably will be.
And vice versa, you'll probably be recording me when I shoot one.
So,
you don't think them are good rules?
no, absolutely not. No, we're not going to. I do not agree to those at all. I do not sign off on that at all. I'm just imagining what it's going to be like, one of us in a dress. We're going to be like trying to be serious, and the other person's just going to not be able to keep it together on
You're
that
gonna be
podcast.
laughing.
Yeah, because this person's going to be in a dress.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, God, I'm
Now,
scared.
is a dress, can we pick out does the winner get to pick the dress out?
No, the loser. The loser gets. Okay, this is a stipulation that we're adding here. Can we both agree to that? The loser gets to pick the dress.
Well, he's going to,
The loser gets to pick the dress.
okay.
The loser has to order it, and then the winner will wear it on the podcast. Deal?
Deal.
Deal. Okay, you heard it here.
All right.
Those are the rules.
Yep.
100%.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, Schmitty. Like I said, things are rolling. This past Saturday, or a couple Saturdays ago, March 1st, the BAA held its annual meeting in Nashville, Tennessee.
Yep.
I was watching the live stream, and I took away some of the things that I wanted to mention here on the Bowfishing Buzz podcast.
All right, let's hear it.
First of all, congratulations to Steve Corrine on winning the 2024 BAA Bowfisher of the Year with 490 points. and just a pile of BAA records.
Yeah, he's a record setter for sure.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
And that brings us to today's guest, Schmitty. You guessed it right. Steve Corrine will be joining us today and talking about his bowfishing adventures that span from here all the way to Africa and South America in the last several years. Steve is also the designer of the Vader bows.
That's very cool. That's awesome.
And he actually designed that over when he was in Africa, I believe.
That's crazy.
And
That's a smart guy.
He's got some really, really interesting stories
Yeah.
about bowfishing over there.
And I'll just say this, too. You showed me a little bit of a video clip of them over there. Watching the video gave me the heebie-jeebies. I was like, oh, my God, how in the world is he doing that?
And we're going to be having some of that on our video podcast.
Yep.
You'll see it on our AMS YouTube channel.
Yep.
You also see it on Carbon TV.
Absolutely.
And he's got some crazy fish that he shot.
Yeah. Yep. I know we've said his name a bunch in the past when we do our records as well.
Yes.
Steve's always been mentioned in that.
Really looking forward to having Steve join us here because do you know who Chuck Adams is?
I have heard of Chuck Adams. Yes, I have.
Okay, yep. Chuck Adams is known as the greatest bow hunter of all time.
Okay.
Well, there's an article in a magazine that says Steve Corrine is a Chuck Adams of Africa.
Wow, that's high praise. That's crazy.
Wow. Steve has shot 105 of the available 107 species to hunt in the continent of Africa with his bow, with over 30 of them being world records.
Wow, that's insane.
Now, these are just critters, Schmitty, that walk on dry ground, but we're going to dig deep into his bowfishing adventures and crazy fish that he has shot in those continents.
That's very cool. That'll be very interesting. We're going to get some really cool stories. And I think, Matt, we were talking about this a little bit before the podcast. Just so everyone knows, we might break this into two parts.
It might be a two-part podcast.
Because in talking a little bit with Steve is a great talker.
Yes.
He's great at telling stories, and that's what we're all about, is some good old stories. So just beware. If this gets a little long, we might break it into two and get it to you next week.
Right.
So just so everybody knows. But to go along with some of that BAA news there, Matt, we're going to say a big congratulations to Landon Conley. He won the 2024 BAA Youth Bowfisher of the Year with 1,050 points and 34 youth records and one adult record. That's insane.
Wow. This is pretty cool to me because I can remember back in 2011, Schmitty, we had our Big 20, our first ever in down
in Kentucky. Yeah.
Yep. Brandenburg, Kentucky.
Yep.
And his dad was shooting with not shooting with us, but was shooting in a tournament.
Okay.
All right.
Yep.
And during weigh-ins on Sunday, his dad came up and was talking to me and stuff a little bit about the tournament and how they did and stuff. And this little baby at that time,
he had to be small.
Yeah,
little fella.
It was Landon.
Really?
Way back then.
Wow.
Yep. And I remember seeing them at the next couple tournaments that we had there, and then of course we moved it to Wisconsin.
Yep.
And I saw that he won the award.
Yep.
And I congratulated him, made a comment on Facebook, congratulated him. And his dad came back on and says, you had a huge part in this as well.
Oh, that's amazing.
And that was really cool because you remembered him, way back then.
Right. Right.
So it's pretty cool to see Landon out there getting those records, getting the award for the BAA Youth Bowfisher of the Year. That's really cool, and that's something to be very proud of. So congratulations, Landon, on that great record.
That's awesome. That's crazy. Landon's shooting a lot of fish, too. 34 youth records?
Yes.
That's wild. That's crazy.
Yep.
Something else really cool here, man.
Yes.
We are great friends, great guy, Jody Bigalke. Huge congratulations to Jody.
Yes.
On being inducted into the BAA Hall of Fame.
Right.
That is so cool.
Yep.
Ever since, you know Jody more than I do, you want to just dive into a little bit of what Jody's meant to you over the years?
Yeah. I can remember when Jody first started getting into bowfishing tournaments. He actually bought one of my old boats that I bought years ago.
Oh, really?
I bought it from a guy in Michigan. It was an 1860 Tracker Grizzly. I sold it to a kid over by the Castle Rock area. Then I think Sawyer Drock bought it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow, it went
and
all
then
over
Jody
the place.
Bigalke bought it. He put a fan on the back of there and was running around with that. But the cool thing about Jody was he was coming to these bowfishing tournaments with his daughter, who was very young at that time, and another young boy that was very young at that time, Slimer.
Slimer, yep. And Tess.
Yep. And he was shooting with 2 kids
That's
in those
awesome.
tournaments. Wow. Took second place in the Worlds of the year. It was in Wisconsin.
Gosh. Wow.
And it brought him to tears. Competing against all these big teams, and he took second place, and he just wanted to come and see what it was to be part of the tournament because it was here in Wisconsin, and he ends up taking second place with 2 kids in the boat.
That's crazy.
And it was so awesome.
I know in one of our first podcasts we had Jody on that the name of those episodes was Tournament Talk with Jody Bigalke. I remember him telling that story and getting teared up on the pod as well. That's so cool to see how close to home that is.
Exactly. I mean, taking kids out, competing in tournaments, building his own boats now. He was on the WBA board, the BAA board. And I have one little very funny story because Jody and I were teammates for several years here on the WBA shoots. We actually won Big 20 team twice. Missed it one other time by like 2 points. But Jody was a great captain. He had determination. He never got flustered.
That's
never
very
got
important.
Flustered. He stayed calm. He had that same
demeanor
throughout the whole night tournament, no matter if it was raining cats and dogs or if we weren't finding fish, to where if we were shooting a bunch of fish, to if we were just shooting smaller fish. We always had the same demeanor. But one thing that I'll never forget is we were shooting in the Battle Border tournament on the Mississippi River years ago. It was Minnesota versus Wisconsin teams. And we were shooting in Pool 9. And we were in his boat. At that time, he just had an outboard on there. He didn't have a fan. He did have a fan, but no airboat at the time.
Okay, gotcha.
And so he had a big outboard on there. Well, if anybody knows bow fishing up here on the Mississippi River, when you're on there, and if you're going to go wide open, you better stay in the channel. Because if you don't stay in the channel, it comes right up to 2 feet of water. Sandbars that change from year to year that'll stop you instantly. Because of the currents and the high waters that we have, they move around from year to year. Grass flats, wing dams.
Those wing dams will get you
stump
bad.
fields.
You know, you can kiss your lower unit
everywhere.
It's
like a minefield out there when you get out of the channel. Okay. So we get to the boat landing that afternoon, that dusk.
And this is tournament night.
Okay. And the stipulation with the border battle was you had to weigh in 5 gar. If you did not weigh in 5 gar, it didn't matter what the other fish were, you couldn't weigh in. You had to have 5 gar.
Interesting.
Well, we had a pretty good gar spot.
Some
pretty good sized gar. But it was way, way, way a long run on a river. Well, if we were to take the channel, it would take us a long time to follow the channel, from one side of the river to the other side. So we get going, and we're on the channel. And we're flying down, We got our hats on backwards.
Feeling good. Adrenaline's pumping.
And Jody looks at me and goes, "Hang on."
Oh, no.
He said, "I made a route the other day."
God.
He goes, "Grab my phone." He had it on Google Maps.
Oh, jeez.
So we're driving on the channel, all right? I'm standing next to him. I'm holding his phone, and he's looking at the phone, and all of a sudden he goes, "Here we go, boys." And he just right out of the channel. And now we are cutting through the minefields.
Oh, God.
Wide open. I'm holding his phone, and I'm trying to hang on myself and watch where we're going.
So he's watching you holding his phone?
He's watching me hold his phone. So he could see his path.
Oh, my God.
Now, mind you, there was no marked trail on his. He's just following aerial view of where he needs to be.
Oh, Jody.
Wow. That was scary.
Did anything bad happen while cutting?
We made her.
Wow.
We made her.
Oh, my gosh.
We made her. There was some times where I was like, you're getting kind of close to this object right here. You're getting kind of close to this little dam right here.
Oh, my gosh. Wow. Oh,
yep.
And, those maps aren't always, updated exactly.
Right. And like we said, things move around.
Oh, 100%.
When you get those high floodwaters every year on the Mississippi River, things
you got
change.
a freaking log floating there all of a sudden.
Just like in the sand dunes when the winds and stuff, the sand dunes change. The sand changed underwater, too, from the flows. And he had a path marked, and it worked. It cut crazy. It cut probably 15, 20 minutes off the normal route by going straight down the river instead of back and forth.
When you started telling that story, I was envisioning my Garmin, and I'm following a track, but there was no track. It was just based off remembrance.
Right. Yep. When we got down there and finally got down to our spot, I said to him, I said, Jody, we aren't doing that anymore unless we have an airboat. So you know what he did?
Went and got an airboat.
He built an airboat the next year.
That a boy. That's amazing. Wow.
Oh, Jody.
Wow. So once you drive successfully through the minefield, was the drive worth the drive?
Yeah, you darn right it was.
All right. All right.
I think before we even turned the lights on, we had two buffs in the boat.
Really?
Yeah, and then it started getting dark, and we turned the lights on, and we started easing around our gar hole, and just like clockwork here, they started
really
coming up,
Wow.
And we piled about 9 or so gar, and said, "All right, let's go. We got them.
Yep.
Let's go."
Yep.
And we ended up coming back to Wayans that next day. And everybody, like I said, you had to have 5 gar.
Yep.
There was one team that had a heck of a stringer of commons and some buffs, and they only had 3 gar.
Oh man,
Yeah.
that's a heck of a little rule to have
Yep.
in there. That's a
Yep.
strict rule.
And everybody's weighing in like 4, 6, 7, 8, 9-pound gar and
Yep,
stuff.
yep.
A lot of them were on the smaller side. We cover ours up with the blanket in the boat there, and we come up to
boy.
weigh-ins there, and we start pulling these 18, 20
Oh
pounders,
my
15
gosh,
pounders.
you're gaining a lot of ground with that.
When you could add 5, just 15-pound
Right?
fish.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
How'd you guys end up placing in the tournament? You remember?
yeah. We won.
Attaboy.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, we
cool.
won.
Wow.
And just a lot of fun with Jody, and congratulations, Jody. You deserve it. It was a lot of fun shooting with you in these past years. I'm sure we'll be shooting again this year. A lot of fishing down there in the Mississippi River with Jody also.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
a lot of good memories with Jody, and I'm glad that he got that award. He deserved it.
That's awesome. That's very cool. Congrats again to Jody.
Yep.
One of the things, Matt, one of the topics that's been popping up a little bit here recently in the bowfishing community. Some people are asking, why do I have to return to weigh-ins when shooting a tournament with my boat? Some of the points that they were making was safety.
Yep.
As far as pulling the boat, something goes wrong with the boat. They'd spend less money on gas if they're not pulling the boat. Less wear and tear on vehicles, trailers, bearings.
Yep.
You want to just give us a couple little insights on why those boats are required to be back at weigh-ins?
I'm sure there's some tournaments where they're not.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. But a lot of the bigger ones, you're expected to come back with your boat.
Yeah, ours, for
And
example.
I totally get the wear and tear, less money on gas, wear and tear on your stuff and equipment and stuff. But man, it's just that, to me, that's part of bow fishing. When you come to a statewide, multi-statewide tournament, you're expected to come back with that same boat.
Right.
It's just what's expected in bow fishing tournaments.
Right. Yep.
And yeah, can it be easily removed out of the rules? Absolutely. For example, here in Wisconsin, in our tournament, the name is Big 20.
Yep.
You have to come back with the same marked boat.
Yep.
All right. Even the same marked vehicle.
Yep. That's why I write the numbers on the windshield.
To me, our bow fishing tournament is kind of like an endurance along with bow fishing.
Yep.
I want you to be aware of your bearings.
Yep.
I want you to have extra bearings in your truck.
Yep.
I want you to know how to change those
Yep.
bearings
A
on
spare
the fly.
Yep.
Spare tires.
Mm-hmm.
There's been several tournaments where I've taken the fish out of the boat and put them in dumps in garbage bins in the back of the boat.
Yep. In the back of the boat or the back of the truck?
Excuse me, back in the truck,
Yep.
yes.
Yep.
The back of the truck. Just because I didn't want that weight
Yep.
in the boat trailer.
Riding on the trailer.
Yeah. There's little boats that have single axle trailers.
Right.
Put them fish in your truck. You need to know your limits on your trailers. They're made to pull that boat up and down the highways.
Right.
Not 1,200 pounds of extra fish.
Yep.
Things are going to happen when that
Yep. Good point.
that happens.
Yep.
You need to know your stuff. You need to be aware of what you're doing.
Right. Just like I think guys would go into, everybody who shoots a bowfishing tournament, they've got their bow shooting true, they've got their arrows, they've got all their equipment ready to rock and roll, and that needs to also be the same way with your vessel, your boat, your trailer, your truck, everything.
Another thing is, I love to see these boats come back to weigh-ins with their boats and their lineups here.
Yep.
I love to see the mud slimed on the lights, grass in their boat, blood, scales. I like to see them laying them fish on them decks.
Right.
I like to see that.
Yeah, all the different types of boats, the different customizations guys do. It's always very cool to see that. See how creative the bowfishing community really can be.
One thing that I really, really like, Schmitty, is when you get a 16-foot boat that comes through weigh-ins.
Yeah.
And they got 20 stud commons on the deck of their boat. I'm like, yeah.
So cool to see.
Yeah. You know, if they don't come back with their boat, did they shoot? Were they in an airboat? Were they in a fan boat? Or did they have a big boat?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I like to see those smaller boats come back with those fish laying on them decks.
Yeah.
I just like that.
Yep.
And, you know, another thing, Schmitty, is foul play. You know, we all know what somebody will do for $100.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What will people do for $10,000?
Right.
$30,000.
Yep.
$15,000.
Yep.
What will they do for that?
Right.
Foul play.
Yep. And that just adds one more obstacle. If you've got a bad apple, that adds one more obstacle to them being able to pull something like that off.
One thing as a tournament director, especially after a tournament, is you hate to hear about accusations that were never brought up at all, except on social media.
Yep.
I hate that.
Yep.
And that's where stuff like that comes into play.
Right.
You know? Yeah, we have a polygraph test.
Yep.
We'll randomly polygraph people. It's not necessarily going to be the first place team. It could be the fifth place team.
Might be the 30th place team.
Right.
We're going to slit carp open.
We
We're
slit
cut
carp like
open.
crazy up on weigh-ins.
Yep.
And it's not going to be the big 34-pounder. It's going to be a 17 or 18-pounder or a 12-pounder.
Yep.
You know, it's not going to be that big one, the 20s. Because you're going to expect something to happen to a big fish.
Right. Especially
if they're not going to expect you to grab a 23-pound fish.
Right. Your 15th biggest common you're weighing in.
Yeah.
People might think, oh, we can slip that past them.
No, that's the one that you want to grab.
Yes, exactly. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. You know, when we get it. Tournament directors, we get this. Stuff's going to happen that's out of the ordinary.
Yep. Out of control.
Out of control. You're going through a green light and your boat gets T-boned.
Right. Yeah.
You're in a dark parking lot boat launch area back in the timber somewhere and somebody slashes your tires.
Right.
We get that. We know that. Call us up. You know, take us timestamp. Show us a video of what's going on. Hey, we just got back to the boat landing. We're trying to get back, but some jerk slashed our tires, you know.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
Because people that are back at weigh-ins on time, that are weighing their fish, that did everything, when stuff like that happens, they start to wonder.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
They start to wonder.
Yep, and the rumors start spreading.
And the rumors start going around.
Right. And then if that given person who the rumors are about places high,
exactly.
then it spreads like wildfire.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
So that's just some of my thoughts on why I think boats should have to come back to weigh-ins.
Yeah.
You know, bow fishing, I mean, we all see these, everybody has a truck.
Yep.
Everybody's got trucks or they got bigger vehicles. You can put those barrels of fish in your boat.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
In your truck. I keep saying my boat, the boat.
Yep.
In the truck. You know, get some of that weight out of there.
Right.
One thing that is kind of nice here in Wisconsin is you cannot haul water outside of that specific body of water.
Yep.
So you don't have to worry about that extra, 600 pounds of water.
Right.
Keep your fish on that.
Yeah.
You know. So you don't have to worry about that. But, yeah, that's just some of my thoughts. Do you have anything
those
that
are
you
good
want
points.
to throw
I think
in there?
you pretty much covered everything, Matt. I have two things I want to bring up from everything you just said. Number one, have you ever shot in a tournament that it was not required to bring your boat back to weigh-ins, personally?
No, I have not.
Okay.
I always brought the boat back. I wanted my boat back with me.
Right.
I didn't know where else to put it.
I was just curious if you'd ever shot in one where that wasn't, you get a truck pulling in with fish in the back and no boat and they weigh in. I was just curious if you ever witnessed that yourself.
I have seen vehicles come through with no boats that weigh in.
Okay, so that must have been one that wasn't a rule.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know, and I guess I've never really thought about it for the WBA tournaments here in Wisconsin, but I never walked around and looked because, of course, I wasn't directing those tournaments and stuff. But, I saw all the boats in the parking lots when we came back to weigh-ins, and I saw them coming through the weigh-ins with the numbers guys were, coming through on their boats, and the big 20 guys were coming through with their boats.
Sure.
I don't, there might be some out there that, you see a lot of them where some of the tournaments that are out there are bank and boat specific.
Mm-hmm, sure.
So I'm sure, of course.
Yep. Guys shooting from the bank
like
aren't hauling a boat. Sure. I gotcha. Second thing, have you ever had a very sketchy boat landing experience? Have you ever had a little bit of a spooky experience at a boat landing late at night?
Late at night?
Yeah, like, just or whatever, just one where you're like, ooh.
Well, I got a little worried one year when I had my 1860 and we put in down on Petenwell.
Okay.
And you know how those can be when the water is really low?
Yep.
To where you have to go past the slabs?
Yep. Oh, yeah.
And then you have that concrete that just abruptly
stops.
Is down about 2 feet
drop off
and
so
you just
fast.
Wham!
Yep.
That can bust up some axles.
Mm-hmm.
You know? There's been a couple sketchy boat lands that we put in in the Kentucky on the Ohio River.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The one that I just, you brought that up.
We're packing.
Yeah.
We're packing.
Yep. I know a couple of them there. And the only thing that I've really ever had that I remember being like, oh, this maybe isn't a great area.
Mm-hmm.
It was you, me, and Dennis Redden. We were down in Kentucky somewhere. I don't remember where. And I would always go up and get the boat. When we're done for the night, I'd run up and get the boat.
Yeah, I know where you're talking.
Okay. Yeah. All right. And a couple times after this happened on that same trip and for years after, Dennis would walk up to the ramp with me.
Yeah.
It's 3 a.m. It's pitch black.
Yep.
But before Dennis would go with me, I'd run up there. And I remember getting up to the boat. And it wasn't anything bad, but I don't know for what reason. I walked around the truck in a weird manner. I walked like a full circle around the truck for some reason. I don't remember why. Mm-hmm. And someone put a freaking boulder, a big freaking rock right behind our front tire of the truck.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. And I just remember being like, whoa, someone did this on purpose.
Sure.
It obviously wasn't there when I pulled the truck in to park it. And so I freaking pulled it out of the way and everything. But that's really the only thing that I can remember, at least, that it was like, someone's trying to, do something bad to us here. Yeah. But I was just curious.
I remember a couple years ago down in the Ohio River, it's those boat landings that don't have lights in the parking
exactly.
lots.
And it was pitch black. Yep.
I can remember coming back to boat landings on the Ohio River. Well, you'll see when you get the closer you're getting, you'll see somebody's like you said, it's like 2:30 in the morning, 3:30 in the morning, and you'll see people standing out by a fire.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, oh boy.
Yep. I remember there was one other time I went up to get the boat and there was a porta potty there in the parking lot. It's like 3 a.m. We're the only boat at the ramp, and I can hear someone in the porta potty.
Oh boy!
And I remember being like, "What?"
Were they grunting?
Nope. It could have been
the old dookie.
I don't know. But like they would have had to have made a special trip on foot to poop in this porta potty because there was no vehicles there, and it could have been a bear or a raccoon or a human. I have no idea. I remember like, what is in that porta potty? Freaking okay. Back the boat in, and we freaking went. Yeah. Yeah, that's weird. Porta potty at 3 a.m. should be completely vacant.
Yeah.
With no vehicles there.
Oh boy.
Yeah, it was weird. But
I remember coming back to that boat launch where there were people surrounded by a fire like at 3:30 in the morning, and you're like, oh boy, it's like a Friday night, and
you don't know what's going on.
You don't know what's going to happen, and you get up there and stuff, and you start putting the latches on the boat, and all of a sudden you can see silhouettes getting closer to the boat, and here they come, And almost every time
it's good spirited.
They're half in the bag, and what are you guys up to tonight?
I did that 10 years ago. Yeah. We went out and shot some bears.
Yeah. Most of the time, it's a decent thing. I remember down a Reelfoot one year, we were down there, and we pulled the boat up, and then two vehicles drove down by us, and I was like, oh boy. And they were some good guys,
Okay, sure.
They were bowfishers, and they were just coming down to see what we did and stuff.
But
yeah. You always wonder, with the boat landings, it could be a little goofy.
You saying Reelfoot? Do you remember the story? It was we were both down there, but it might have been you dropped me off, and we went up, and there were some guys fishing on the dock. And the one guy's like, oh, you guys out bow fishing? Yep. He goes, he says, I like to shoot them herons with my bow and arrow.
That's right.
He says, and then the line comes out, and I just sit there and I fly them like a kite.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, why are you telling me this? No. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. They were oversharing a little bit.
That's funny stuff. But those are just some of the reasons why I think that boat should come back to tournaments.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
Just my thoughts on it, and that's why I think we'll keep it in the boat. And like I said, if something goofy happens out of the ordinary, call us up. We'll do our very best to work with you.
Yep.
I remember one year Al Brusky came back with he had a dual axle. He came back without a tire on one side of his. He had it strapped up tight.
Yep.
Came back to weigh-ins with the tandem there. So,
Well, moving on, Matt.
Yep.
May 30th. BAA Worlds pre-registration will open. $300 per division after July 1st. Oh, excuse me. It's $300 per division. After July 1st, it goes up to $350. So get pre-registered, save $50. There will be 2 big fish categories this year.
Yeah.
One freshwater and one saltwater. $2,000 for each of those categories.
Nice.
That's very cool.
Yep.
That'll be a little bit different.
Yep.
A little different.
And if you watched the BAA meeting, you saw that there was quite a bit of discussion and stuff with the guys that are running the Worlds this year, and they sound like they got everything lined up. So
good.
We'll see how it goes. I hope it's very smooth for them. One thing that the BAA is also doing, Derek, is they're doing an Elite Series points competition.
Yeah, explain that to me a little bit.
So it's $200 entry per captain. Okay. I don't want to get into too much rules. You can go on there and look at the rules and stuff. But what they're doing is you're getting points. Okay, if you compete in the Muzzy Classic, the Cajun 8, the BA Worlds, the Bass Pro US Open, and the AMS Big 20.
Okay, I got
you get points for competing in, just going there and competing in them to finishing in the top 3.
Yep.
You'll get points. If you happen to shoot the big fish in those tournaments, you get points for that. And then it's 100% payback to the team that does the best.
Oh, that's nice.
So it's
very
a
cool.
pretty cool thing. So if you are thinking about shooting in, maybe you just need to shoot in 2 of them.
Right. Yeah.
Or 3 of them.
Yeah.
You don't need to compete in all of them.
Yeah. Yep.
Unless you're pretty darn hardcore. If there's a team that competes in all these,
that would be awesome.
They won't be able to.
Oh, that's right.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. There's some double dates going on there.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I forgot about that.
That's neither here nor there. Yeah. We also have some pre-registration going on right now, Matt.
Mm-hmm.
That opened up on March 1st.
Yes.
Is that correct? That was a Saturday for the AMS Big 20 up here. Pre-registration is currently open as we speak right now. I believe we had 25 teams pre-register on opening weekend.
I can't remember. We have the lineup as of last week on our. I posted some links on our Facebook page.
Absolutely.
Another thing that I did, John and I did, was we made we added photos to the past Big 20/30 champions.
Yes, yep, very cool.
All the way back to, so you can go on there and see what the weights were back in our first ones, and it's very interesting because, like I said, our first ones up to 2018, I believe, were big 30s.
Yep,
and then you can see the difference in weights.
Yep,
and it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think 18 is right because I started working here 06, 15. I remember I only worked one tournament that was a big 30 format in Marshfield, and then we switched to the big 20. So yeah, I
think our heaviest weight was our second year we had it down in Brandenburg. Team Triple X has like 900 and some pounds.
Oh my gosh,
over 900 pounds.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome.
That was Jim Ed Gill.
Oh, old Jim Ed.
Old Jim Ed Gill and Ryan McKinney and another shooter that they had. Yeah.
Now he's like bringing in 900 pounds.
Oh.
30 times a day.
Yeah, I was going to say a lot.
With those big commercial nets.
Yes.
That's cool.
Now he's a commercial netter down there.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Wow, look how he just kept going up. He wants more and more weight in the boat. Yep. That's crazy.
You look at that picture of Jim Ed, and then you see how young he was back in 2012. Yep. To now he's married, he's got 2 kids, he's commercial netter down there, so it's pretty, that's just so cool. The memories that you get, and you see the changes in people's lives, just like Jim Ed, Landon Conley, Jody Bigalke.
It's like you're kind of living through these people a little bit. You get to see their bowfishing career kind of lay out in front of you. That's very cool.
Yep. And don't forget that if you pre-register by, I believe it's April 22nd, you'll get a free AMS Big 20 T-shirt.
Yes.
After that, we got to cut it off because we got to get those ordered.
Yeah. Yep. Speaking of T-shirts, Matt, if you have not noticed before, I am rocking the brand new Megamouth T-shirt. I'll for our video watchers, I'll show you. It's a heather gray shirt, Megamouth logo on the left chest, and our vertical Megamouth flag on the back. They are extremely cozy, extremely comfy. They are. I put them on the website yesterday.
Nice.
We have a ton of inventory of them. I will say, if you guys are looking to order smalls or mediums, I would get those ordered very quickly because we do have a limited quantity of smalls and mediums just because we don't move as many of them throughout the year.
Right.
We've got lots of large XL and 2Xs, but these are currently live on the website.
Yep.
One other cool little note here, Matt. We both know him. We're friends with him. Reese Bakken
Yes.
He was down. He was shooting paddlefish this last week.
Nice.
He was doing all kinds of cool stuff. He sent us some pictures. I'm sure they'll be on the video podcast. The biggest one he said was near 40 pounds. He said it was just an awesome fish.
One.
He shot one that had the old schnoz cut right off of it.
I got a couple of them.
Yeah. Yep. You lose like 2 feet of length on these things. It just completely cut right off.
Yep.
He said that they are just everywhere right now.
Coming
up, getting ready to spawn. He said there's people down there snagging them, which is
he in?
legal.
You know what state he's in?
I'm not sure. I don't know if he told me that or not, to be honest with you.
Okay, I'm just curious what state he's in.
Yeah,
Oklahoma
he did.
Or something like that.
Yeah. He went. He did some car work for a buddy, and he was delivering that vehicle. His buddy named Caden. Reese does a lot of really cool stuff with car calibration and whatnot. He does a lot of really cool stuff there. Wisconsin Auto Calibration. So we'll shout out to Reese there. He does some really cool stuff there. But he was down there sending us all kinds of pictures and everything.
Awesome.
He's been having a great time. And I bring that up not only because it's very cool that a friend of ours is shooting paddlefish, but Matt, we have our first trip planned. We are going to go down.
Yes.
With the Obsession Outdoors.
Yes.
Clayton Meyer. We
had him on the podcast.
We did.
Podcasts ago.
Yep, and we may have talked about this in the past, but it is cemented down. We are 100% going. We're going to go down there and try to shoot some fish with him in June. We're going to stay at his beautiful fishing lodge that he has down there for his clients that he takes out.
Great.
It's going to be a really cool deal. We'll be down there in June doing that. Looking forward to it.
A couple days before that, I'll be down there for the Jared Ashmore Youth Tournament.
Yep.
You have a wedding that weekend, but you're going to come down and meet me down there.
Who plans a wedding right in the middle of bowfishing season? Let me tell you.
Come on, people.
I don't know what to say about that
Jeez,
one. But
Louise,
yeah,
get your act together.
I'll probably have to. I'll fly down probably a day or two after that, and then we'll go shoot with Clayton, and we'll have ourselves a fun little
That's
trip
going to
down
be
there.
a very fun time. I can't wait to do that.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I tell you what, Matt, we are 38 minutes in. We'll resume the podcast and give our very special guest.
Oh, that's going to be a good time.
Steve Corrine.
Can't wait.
A call.
Yes.
Right after this quick commercial break.
Are you looking to elevate your bowfishing brand with stunning design solutions? Look no further than N Designs. Their team of talented designers is dedicated to bringing your vision to life. Whether it's t-shirts, hats, leather products, eye-catching logos, to captivating boat wraps, they have you covered. Plus, with their commitment to excellence and attention to detail, you can trust that your project is in good hands. Don't settle for ordinary. Choose N Designs for extraordinary results. Visit their website today and let's bring your ideas to life. N Designs, where creativity meets excellence. Efficiency Bowfishing Lights by Outdoor Innovations USA. A color tone adjustable and dimmable light with a unique patented reflector design that puts more light where you need it. Efficiency Bowfishing Lights offer 3 different models: the 65-watt single-color economy light, the 65-watt Efficiency V2 tri-color dimmable light for maximum efficiency and versatility, and the 130-watt Efficiency Maximus, designed to be an all-out beast of a bowfishing light. Efficiency, designed and built by bowfishermen for bowfishermen. Check them out at OutdoorInnovationsUSA.com.
And welcome back to the Bowfishing Buzz. All right, Schmitty, we've got the man on the phone,
Absolutely.
Mr. Steve Corrine from Maryland. Steve, how are you doing today? And thank you for joining us.
No, thank you guys. I'm doing great. I'm doing great. It's 70 degrees here in Maryland, and I'm fishing tonight, so I guess all is good.
That's awesome.
Good.
We hit 65 yesterday here in Wisconsin, which is 40 degrees higher than what we're used to. So that was really cool.
You still have ice? You still have ice?
Yes.
Matt,
I was actually ice fishing this past weekend. Derek, you were up north ice fishing.
There was 2 feet of ice up there, easy yet.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Trucks everywhere.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But, Steve, this time of year here in Wisconsin, we're starting to get those creeks, those rivers, the upper parts of flowages are starting to open up. Mm-hmm. And, man, you can get into some real good bow fishing.
Oh, yeah. Guys are out shooting.
Absolutely.
Yep.
I know. I think I'm going to have to visit Wisconsin this year.
Absolutely.
Have you
It's
ever
on the list. Wisconsin and South Dakota.
Okay, so you've never bowfished Wisconsin, huh?
Nope.
Okay.
I spent 4 years on Lake Michigan in Evanston outside Chicago shooting carp at a hot water outflow at the university I went to there. So I have done the Midwest thing for a while. That was back in the day where there were huge commons. Bow fishing this is a long time ago. This was in the early 90s. Wow. So bow fishing was relatively new. I think I was probably the only person around standing on the shore of Lake Michigan shooting big commons.
Well, that's very cool. That's awesome.
Yeah,
that was really cool.
how I really cut my teeth in bow fishing was in college. I fished every day. I think whether I had class or not, I was pretty much out there in the spring.
That is really cool. That is really cool.
I tell you what, Steve, just tell our listeners who Steve Corrine is, where you live, and just some of your hobbies, what you like to do.
I can imagine that's going to be pretty easy.
I grew up in Maryland. So
Okay.
I grew up in Maryland, right near where I am right now, along the Potomac River. Always had a love for bows and arrows. So even when I was a little kid, I was making self bows. Everything I did was pretty much archery. And my dad eventually gave me a Bear Grizzly recurve.
Okay.
Started shooting it in the yard incessantly until I saw a guy at the wildlife management area down the road from here waiting around with a recurve as well, shooting carp. So that was when I was in the early teens. And so I begged my dad to go out and get me a reel and a reel seat to put on my bow, which I did. And I remember those days, I don't know, it was so early in bow fishing that if I went out and waited around and shot one carp, I thought it was a tremendous success. That's how things have changed. And that kind of coincided with my parents buying a weekend house on the Chesapeake Bay. So I remember the first or second time I went down there, I saw a cow-nosed ray swim underneath the pier, and I was like, wait a minute, that's big enough for me to hit.
Wait a minute.
And it looks like it can really fight. So then, all through high school, I pretty much was shooting cow-nosed rays and carp. And then I got to college, as you know, and started shooting those commons in your neck of the woods.
Sure.
Awesome.
That's really cool.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Of course, doing everything I could with a bow to hunt deer. I'm in Maryland. It's pretty much deer. And went to college and got 2 degrees, one in anthropology and one in fine arts, painting.
Wow.
And for my anthropology degree, I spent most of the time rebuilding Native American self bows and testing them.
Wow, that's very
And then
cool.
napping chert arrowheads. Yeah, my apartment in college was like half filled with wood shavings and chips of chert.
Oh my gosh. Wow, that's
and then, so then what happened is also sort of at some point in high school, my dad, who's a surgeon, ended up operating on a guy who turned out to be a booking agent for African safaris. So operates on the guy, saves his life, and when I was 16, he gave as a gift to my father a trip, a hunting trip for me and him in Africa.
Oh, that's cool.
So, of course, we can't turn down a free trip.
Yeah.
So there I go to Africa as a 16-year-old hunting. And then we kind of course, as most people do who have been to Africa, got addicted because there's almost nothing like it. I mean, so many different species and just the incredible exotic adventure of it.
Yeah.
And then when I graduated college, it was okay, do I sort of stay here in America and join the rat race, or do I try and move to Africa and become a professional hunter?
Right.
And that's what I did.
Right.
I left all of my friends and family behind, took my savings, bought an old Land Cruiser, and got a job as an apprentice professional hunter in Zambia.
Wow. Oh my gosh, Steve! It sounds like you are kind of living the dream of every person who's ever wanted to hunt ever in their life. To be honest with you. Oh my gosh!
And I say to people that they're like, you're so lucky, and I say, well, I am very lucky. I mean, I'm a really fortunate guy, wonderful family, and the rest of it. But it's something that most people could do. I mean, as someone who ended up having a lot of different hunting businesses in Africa, I would have gladly hired a young American to come out and work. It's just that I think it's a little bit daunting for a lot of people to just leave everything behind and move to a different continent.
Yes.
But
absolutely.
I did it, and I don't regret it. I ended up staying there for 25 years.
Wow. Goodness gracious.
Yep.
That's
I
crazy.
ended up starting hunting businesses all over the whole continent. So,
were you a PH over there?
I was.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Gotcha.
A PH, and then I was hiring PHs to do it for me.
Gotcha.
So my forte was, I started very passionately both hunting all the different species I could in Africa. And I had made it to about 100 species and was kind of starting to run out.
Wow.
And there were still other interesting species of game living in Africa. There just wasn't organized hunting for it. So I partly to start new businesses and partly because I wanted to hunt these animals, I started to open up new countries. So I would go to the government, the wildlife department of a country that had really interesting animals, but no safari industry. Oh. And I would bring them a proposal to start a conservation-based, sustainable safari hunting program where sometimes I would even help them write new game laws. And then, I would start a business where I would bring clients to shoot animals that are pretty much available nowhere else, like Liberia for zebra duiker and Ogilvy's duiker, and then also hunt it myself. So I ended up opening new countries I ended up making new species available kind of for myself and because it was a lot easier to book clients when you're the only person offering something.
How cool is that?
I've got two things to say here, Steve, just based off of what you just told us. One, I love how casually you just said that you shot 100 species in Africa, and so you're kind of starting to run out of things to shoot. You said that like I would say I had cereal for breakfast this morning. That was so casual the way you brought that up. That's very cool.
Yes.
Second thing is, can you just touch on, because it sounds like you are just absolutely as much involved in this type of thing as possible.
Just passion right there.
Yeah, like the positive effects that conservation has over there, because, a lot of people see hunting in Africa, and there's lots of people that don't like that and whatnot, but they don't realize how important that conservation is for that species. Can you just touch on that if you've got anything to say about that?
Sure, because that's what we did.
Yes.
And it works all over the world, for the markhor, the wild goat that lives in Pakistan. So without providing some form of monetary incentive for the local people not to kill and eat these animals, they're going to do just that. And, I don't blame them. I mean, I started a business on Zanzibar Island. There's a tiny little antelope there called the Ader's duiker, and it had never been hunted. There had been a royal moratorium on the hunting of Ader's duiker, and the local people had been eating them for dinner. I don't blame them. It's an animal they live with and they've been eating, forever, but the population was dwindling incredibly low. So, how do you get people to stop killing things, whether it be for ivory or for food? And the answer is you have to pay them not to. Mm-hmm. How do you get that money to essentially give them the financial incentive not to keep killing animals? And that's through hunting, through organized safari hunting. Yep. And what we did there on Zanzibar is I put such a high trophy fee that not only did the government wildlife department get money to use for conservation, the village we built a clinic, we bought computers for the school. This whole list of benefits that we brought to the community that lives right there, where they said, oh, wow, this is certainly better than killing, the odd Ader's duiker and selling it at the market for $5 a piece.
That is so interesting because when people think about hunting, they think, oh, you guys go out there and you shoot everything. You shoot everything up. You're taking all the animals away.
You just want the trophy.
We're actually, it's conservation that keeps these things stable.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, and sometimes I was able to generate a considerable amount of money. So I went into this country called Somaliland, which is a breakaway nation of Somalia. It actually it happens to be the place where all the pirates are.
Oh, wow.
And I went into that government and the head of the wildlife there at the Ministry of the Environment there actually with a conservation plan. And I brought Jim Shockey there, and he got a very wealthy benefactor here in America to donate $250,000 to the wildlife department for some permits also for a scientific reason, because we took samples of them and everything to harvest some animals for his museum. So they took that and they bought Land Cruisers and, they started a national park with that money. Obviously they had to continue raising money for the national park, but it jump-started just one single hunt and literally a handful of animals jump-started an entire country's wildlife department.
Wow. Yeah. That's really cool. That's why I wanted to figure out more about that. That's awesome, Steve.
I have two questions coming off of this stuff here also. Steve, were you ever, you said Somalia. Were you ever scared going into some of these areas and talking with the people? And I mean,
I probably should have been more scared than I actually was.
Okay.
I'm not sure why I was sort of cavalier about the whole thing.
Okay.
Certainly there's some scary moments. I mean, I've had friends killed by animals or poachers or all kinds of things. So I guess there are some scary moments. Luckily for me, I did the most of my radical stuff before I became a dad. So afterward, I probably would have been more scared of leaving my son without a dad. This is probably what would have worried me the most.
Gotcha.
At the time, I was kind of, young and without a care in the world and was willing to do just about anything or go just about anywhere.
Wow. Places
like Somaliland or Liberia right after the war, Central Africa, where I had an incident in Central Africa where I had lunch with the neighboring camp manager. There were a lot of Sudanese poachers in that area, and there actually was the hunting companies had hired a mercenary to hunt them down and shoot them.
Oh my gosh!
And which he was doing on a daily basis. And as a matter of fact, I was joking with Daniel, the neighboring camp manager, that we were driving a white cruiser just like that mercenary was, and we should probably spray paint our cars.
Yeah, no kidding.
And I drove through an intersection not 20 minutes before Daniel did. And when I say an intersection, this is a tiny track in the middle of nowhere. It takes 2 weeks to drive a Land Cruiser there through the bush to get there. So you might call it a road, but it's just two little tracks that you can put your tires on. Anyway, he ended up driving through that, and in between when I passed it and when he went in there, those same Sudanese poachers set up an ambush and shot the entire car up with an AK-47 over 60 rounds. And then he hit him through the door in the stomach. He crashed into a tree, and then they walked up and executed him with a shot between the eyes.
Good Lord. Oh, my gosh.
That's some freaky stuff.
I just had lunch with him the day before talking about how we should spray paint our Land Cruisers because we'd be mistaken for the mercenary guy named Misha.
Oh,
so
wow, Steve.
I actually, in that same country we're talking about, I did fabulous bow fishing.
Oh.
I drove a whole day through the bush to the Gunda National Park. The director of wildlife of the whole country had the idea to somehow create tourism inside the national park. And he knew that he wouldn't probably be able to allow hunting, but he thought he could allow bow fishing because there were huge Nile perch there.
Oh, wow.
So I actually went with him, and unfortunately, it's a relatively long backstory about why the park had been unmanaged for a year, but it had fish poachers had come into the park with spears and almost denuded the river totally emptied the river of its Nile perch.
Wow.
But it had been bow fished before.
Really?
So there were a couple of French professional hunters who saw these huge Nile perch. That same Gunda River dries up. It's only 10 yards wide, 30 feet wide in the dry season. And they saw these Nile perch. Listen to these bow fishing stories. I asked them how they did it. They had hand wrap reels, old compounds, and just, an old white bow fishing arrow. And they used to stand there, and I did the very same thing a year later. They would get two African spearsmen with these big barbed spears to stand next to them. I mean, these are really fit guys who can run down the river. And they would shoot a Nile perch, huge, like 70-pound Nile perch, and just throw the bow in the water.
Oh! Oh, my God.
Yeah, because they had a hand-wrap reel. There's no way you're going to fight a 70-pound Nile perch.
Oh, my God.
They would shoot it, throw the bow in the water, and the spearsmen would chase the bow downriver because they would see it getting dragged through the shallows, and they would run down the river throwing their spears at the Nile perch until they got it.
Wow. They're like using their bow for a float.
Exactly.
We're going to try that on a buff this spring.
Oh my gosh.
Essentially a boat for a float. It probably would have been better if they put pool noodles on the limbs.
Yeah,
but that's how they did it.
Oh my gosh.
That's crazy.
And they shot some big ones there. When I got there, unfortunately, I only saw one. They were mostly gone. But I had a great time shooting tigerfish.
Oh my gosh.
And these other versions of what we would call suckers. And there's something called the African arowana, which looks quite a bit like the South American arowana. I shot those. So it was great. And I watched Cobb, that's an antelope, wander by. At one point, a pride of lions came past as we were standing on the riverside. So it was great.
Wow. That's amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I was going to ask you before you said the size of these Nile perch. You said 70 pounds on these?
Yeah, or that's not even a particularly big one.
Wow. And I'm assuming there's... And these are on a river, Steve?
Yes.
Okay.
They're on a river, although they are in big lakes, too. I have plans now to go to Ethiopia to try and shoot Nile perch, huge ones, though. Let's see. Let me grab my iPad here just to look up what the world record Nile perch is. I think it's something in the realm of 250 pounds.
What? Oh my gosh. Oh.
So imagine something that looks like a peacock bass.
Yep.
230 pounds, here it says. So,
Wow.
They're big. They're huge.
Yeah,
it says, on Wikipedia, it says the maximum weight is 440 pounds.
Oh, my God. Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
I
huge.
I can't even imagine
Absolutely huge.
And then I'm assuming they're shooting this in a river, so there's a current, there's a flow, so that adds more to that,
Right.
Yes. Yeah. You'd have to, that size, if you're not on open water in a boat, you'd have to almost always use a float. I can't imagine stopping a Nile perch on normal bow fishing equipment. So you'd have to use a float.
Wow. Wow. Well,
on the Omo River in Ethiopia, I've hunted Ethiopia 7 or 8 times and have a good friend who's the outfitter there. They actually built a dam there, and no one is allowed to fish it because they're so worried that someone's going to sabotage the dam by pulling a boat up to the dam wall and blowing it up. So
no kidding.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, because the dam has stopped flooding, and therefore it stopped, the river from refertilizing the ground every year. And some of the communities underneath the dam are unhappy about the water flow. So there's some people that aren't happy with the dam. So no one has fished it in years. And my friend is trying to get special permission to go with governmental guards and actually bowfish it, which would be insane.
Wow. That's crazy.
Because Africa, just like most places, there's not a crazy amount of fish in most areas just because people have eaten. Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
I think a lot of people think that remote places like in Asia or Africa or South America are absolutely loaded with fish. And
right. I did.
They're not.
Okay.
Yeah. The vast majority of fish I've discovered going around the world are right here in America.
Wow, that's interesting.
No, that is very interesting.
Not the majority of fish species, but I mean, as you guys can go out and you find thousands of carp.
Yep.
Or here in the blue catfish. You can have blue catfish in the lights all night long and shoot as many as you want. I mean, we went out a few days ago, and in 1 hour, we shot 56 goldfish.
Oh my gosh! 56?
You just knocked Schmitty's
socks off.
He's been wanting a goldfish forever,
and you see 56. You shot 56 in an hour. Good Lord!
We shot 56 in an hour. Yeah.
I haven't shot one in 27 years.
Are you serious? Well, come here. Come to Maryland. I can take you out, and you could have a true numbers night on goldfish.
Oh, that would be awesome. Yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah, and most of those were colored gold. Well, I think it was something like 38 of them were colored.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
Nice.
Because we do shoot brown ones too. Part of that is brown goldfish.
Okay,
here on the Potomac. We shoot all different colors.
That's cool.
And pivoting from Africa to talk about the Potomac, I started to do some research here about the carp and the goldfish here in the Potomac and in Maryland and all around the country. And I didn't realize that, the U.S. government, for instance, stocked carp all around the U.S. in the late 1800s.
Yep.
And I looked into goldfish, and interestingly enough, supposedly the goldfish here in the Potomac have been here for 400 years.
Really?
The first introduction of let's call it invasive, exotic, non-native species in America was goldfish on the Potomac. So apparently, some of the early settlers brought goldfish, I assume this is on wooden boats, to try and beautify the waters here in the first settlement.
Oh, wow.
Is that crazy?
That's
crazy. Theoretically, we're still shooting goldfish that were stocked by early settlers 400 years ago.
Wow, that's very cool.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
Just in our last podcast, right?
Sorry?
I was going to say in our last podcast, we were talking about the clownfish down in Florida.
Yep, knife fish.
I shot those.
Yep, and how those got into those canals and stuff because people had those as aquarium fish.
Yep.
And when they got a little bit bigger, they just would throw them out there in the little canals.
Yep.
And eventually now you got those knife clownfish, which is
interesting. It's great. It's a wonderful species to shoot.
Yes.
And they start around Lake Ida or Ida, however you want to pronounce it. Well, we found some in a bracket. There were blue crabs in this canal, or crabs of some kind, and we shot clown knife fish there. So, and of course, there's the bullseye snakehead. And if you go far enough south, near to where that border where they don't allow bow fishing anymore, which is, I think, Route 41, you never really know what you can find.
Sure.
Because there's pacu, there's, of course, there's Oscars and Midas, cichlid, and Mayans, but I guess part of it is what happens is when there's a hurricane and these people have fish tanks and the power goes out, fish tanks need circulation and the fish start to die. So they just walk them out the back to the canal behind their yard just to save their fish and dump them in it.
Sure.
Wow.
Wow.
So there's even tiger shovel-nosed catfish. I don't think there's a crazy amount of them, but you never know what you're going to find.
Right. Wow. That's cool.
That's one of the really coolest parts about walking the canals and shooting South Florida. You really never know what's going to turn up.
Right. I bet.
Gouramis, there's just all sorts of weird aquarium fish that you might find.
Mm-hmm.
Even here, there's a big not big, several hundred tilapia. They only exist here because they go into one of the hot water outflows on the Potomac River in the winter because they can't live below 50. But there's far more tilapia, I think, than people think. So in the summer, they spread out around that area of the Potomac. And in the winter, they're packed in front of the outflow. And we have tilapia, a tropical species, living in Maryland.
That's incredible. Yeah. That's incredible.
I
just want to back up just a little bit, Steve, and I want to talk more about your first time, bow fishing experience. You touched on it just a little bit there, and I just want to dive into that a little bit deeper to, who really got you into the sport of bow fishing? Was it just you seeing somebody doing it and you going out on your own and figuring it out? Or
exactly. I did not have a bow fishing mentor.
Okay.
My dad, who grew up on the south side of Chicago in the city as an immigrant son, he loved the outdoors, but he experienced it with me, and we did a lot of wonderful father-son adventures all around the world, including hunting polar bear together and various other things. But he didn't know anything about bow fishing. So I saw that guy. I had a recurve, and I remember there was an article in, I think it was Bow and Arrow Hunting. I don't believe Bow Hunter magazine was there at the time, but one of the first, I think it's the first magazine subscription I ever got, maybe after Outdoor Life, was one of the bow hunting magazines. Mm-hmm. And there was an article about the basics of bow fishing. So I pored over it, read it like 20 times, got my dad to get me a reel, didn't really know what I was doing, and then ended up in the same spot trying to shoot carp.
Okay. All right.
Cool. That's awesome.
So,
that's very cool.
And like I said, I was definitely not particularly successful at it.
But
I didn't, in all honesty, know anyone else around here who bowfished back then.
Right. Mm-hmm. But what I
back
find
then, most people used old compound bows or an old recurve, and that's about it.
Yep. Right. You know what I find very interesting, though, Steve, is not very often do you see, I would consider you a professional hunter, for sure, but not very often do you see professional hunters have the love and the enthusiasm for the sport of bowfishing as you do.
Right.
You know?
Right.
You know, usually they're just hunting four-legged critters on the ground.
Yep.
But you are you just by talking to you a little bit here, you have a deep, deep passion for
100%.
diving into areas and learning about the species and learning their habits, where they live. You know, that's really cool, Steve. I think that's really impressive.
Thanks. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we take it to the extreme. I mean, I go with my son Connor, and we even do this thing I call micro bow fishing. So people, interestingly enough, in Japan, there are fishermen who target the smallest species they can. It's called tanago fishing. They have these tiny miniature rods. Everything is miniaturized, and they're trying to catch these species of fish called bitterling, which are only an inch long.
Oh my God.
So I thought to myself, I wonder what would happen if I try this with my son with a bow. So we go into the creeks here, and we bow fish for creek chubs, blue-headed chubs, even rainbow darters. We're talking about fish that are only 3 or 4 inches long.
Wow. That's crazy.
It's actually a lot of fun.
That is crazy.
Yeah, that's cool.
Crazy.
That's cool. Steve, we touched on it a little bit earlier when we were introducing you here, but my next question for you, the whole Vader bow thing, what made you decide to build a bow and dive into that portion of archery?
Okay, sure. So part of it is what I'm talking about it started with my desire to collect all these, to hunt and shoot all these animals in Africa.
Yep.
So I had to do two things. If I wanted to get the animals of the wide open plains, like the gazelles of the Sahara Desert, I had to extend my shooting range out to well past 100 yards. And I did that through fanatical and meticulous. I mean, I was weighing arrows, tuning, practicing at 170 yards every day.
With the bow.
And then I also, to do the jungles, I had to have, so I mostly hunted the jungles the way the local people do, which is legal there, which is creeping around at night through the jungle with a headlight on.
Oh, wow.
And when you see an animal with a headlight, it's there for a maximum of about 3 seconds, and then it's gone. Yeah. So the only way to actually legitimately do it is to creep around with an arrow knot and your release clipped on your D-loop. And there were some days many days, I would actually do that for the entire night, 12 hours. The most I ever did that with the bow in my hand was 19 hours.
Oh my gosh.
So you're creeping around with an arrow knot through the hot tropical jungle for 19 hours. So I realized I had to do everything I could to lighten my bow. Because at one point I had my normal Elite XLR. And after 2 hours, I distinctly remember this. After 2 hours, it was so heavy in my hands that I took the arrow off the string. We hadn't seen anything, put it into the quiver, and I was like, man, I'm going to carry this over my shoulder for a while. Not 2 minutes later, huge male black diker standing 10 yards away looking at us. And my tracker's whispering, shoot. Yeah. And I'm sitting there fumbling with an arrow, trying to get it re-knocked. Sure. Totally missed that opportunity. Yeah. And I was like, okay, I need to come up with something better. So I started making what I guess some people call Franken bows, which are bows made of a whole bunch of different parts. So I was taking old carbon risers, some of the first that were introduced by a Korean company called Win-Win or High Country, putting different limbs and different cams on them. I was mostly using Elite Rev cams with like a solid stop, and I was skeletonizing everything I could to make them as absolutely light as possible. Yep. So then I moved back to America after 24 and a half years in Africa, almost 25 years. And I moved back here mostly to give my son a better education. I had a couple houses in Tanzania and everything. I had a lovely life, but it wasn't good for him. Or maybe good for him long term.
Sure.
He loved his he grew up on a game reserve in Africa.
Oh wow.
Gosh.
Anyway, yeah. So we came back right before COVID, and suddenly COVID hit, and all my businesses got shut down. All my safari businesses, like zero income, nothing. And I had all sorts of time on my hands, and I was doing a lot of bow fishing. I was like, you know what? Now that I'm back in America where there's a massive amount of fish, it's been my passion my whole life. I'm going to bow fish like crazy. So then I was sitting there fishing, and I thought to myself, you know what? I would love an ultra lightweight bow just for myself.
Yep.
And then I started asking people, like, what are some things you would like in a bow that's used for bow fishing? And a lot of people would say, you know, I wouldn't mind something a little bit lighter. So then I thought, okay, I have the time now, and I've been building bows, mostly self bows, sinew back bows, composite bows. I've just been building things my whole life. So I went into the workshop and I thought, okay, this should be carbon. So I started delving into it, carving risers from foam and covering them with resin and carbon. I even actually used some of the skills I got, strangely enough, from mounting fish to make some of the prototypes.
Wow.
Sure.
Yeah, when I mount my own fish, you cut off all the paired fins and you make a mold with Bondo and fiberglass cloth. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to carve some risers and make molds, which I did with Bondo and fiberglass chop and fiberglass cloth, and then filled them with resin and chopped carbon. So I actually was using my fish taxidermy technique to make those first prototypes. Wow. And then it sort of I just kept making prototypes, shooting fish with them. I made one for Connor, and then that's how it happened.
Wow. That's cool.
And then, now, why do I go off and try and shoot all these different fish? Number one, I love showing my son different parts of the world. I bring him on most every trip. And, to me, bow fishing is about camaraderie and being there with friends and with your children, with family. So it's a great thing to do with him and, showing him different parts of the world. And then just like Africa, where I ended up with 160 something species with a bow. I read about a guy in 2010 who became the first person to catch 1,000 fish on a hook and line.
Oh, okay.
And I guess a handful of people have done it since then, but just a handful. Apparently it's really difficult. So then I thought, I wonder if it's possible to shoot 1,000 different types of fish with a bow.
Oh my gosh.
So then I thought, you know what? I think I'm going to try that.
Wow.
And sort of that's what I'm doing. Not every quest is attainable, and it very well might not be. I think I'm close to something like 250 right now.
I was just going to ask you, where are you at now?
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm at about 250 species, so I'm still a far way off, but I still have a lot to do. I mean, there's far more places to go in South America, and I'm going to go to Africa probably this summer. And when you go to a new place like that, if it's a decent spot with an intact ecosystem, you can shoot 30 or 40 species.
Wow, that's crazy.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Now, did I hear you right before when you said that you were practicing at 170 yards with the bow?
I was, every day.
Oh, my gosh. How do you see what the heck you're shooting at? Holy cow.
I had much better eyesight back then.
That's insane.
People, it's strange. I had such good eyesight. I don't anymore.
Wow.
I would never attempt those long-range shots, but some people would say, what do you focus on, the pin or the target? What is fuzzy for you? And I would say neither. They're both crystal clear.
No kidding.
Wow, that's crazy.
That is cool.
I don't know if my eyes were jumping back and forth. So yes, I did end up, and I think it was ethical because I spent a massive amount of time to get good at those ranges.
Yep.
But I did end up taking a lot of animals over 100 yards.
That's insane.
Dozens and dozens.
Crazy.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So is it fair to say, Steve, that if COVID did not happen, Vader bows might not have happened?
Probably not.
Good
I think
point.
that's probably fair to say.
No kidding.
I might still be happily running all of my African hunting operations, and
Wow.
It's certainly
how crazy
freed up
does
the
stuff
time, right?
Yeah. How crazy that the stuff works out like that.
Right. So when COVID hit and everything was so bad, and I was sitting there, and every single one of my operations was closed down, I thought, well, it's always best to try and turn lemons into lemonade. So, I'm stuck at home, can't travel like I would normally would or do any of that stuff. So I have a full workshop here because I love building things, and I've been building bows my whole life. I mean, I made elk antler and sinew bows Mongolian composites. I've tried to make just about every bow possible.
Wow.
So I thought, here I have the time. Maybe I should try and produce a bow.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's a cool story.
So I guess you're right.
Yeah.
I actually hadn't quite thought of it, but yes. So I guess in a way, I turned COVID into a positive in my
that's
life
great.
because I've had,
Right.
right. I didn't let it beat me and just give up after losing all my business.
When the heck do you sleep, Steve?
Yeah,
my
no
goodness.
I wake up every morning when the sun comes up. For some or other reason, I don't require a massive amount of sleep.
Wow. That's cool.
Which is probably good as a bow fisherman.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Because
right.
we don't sleep much.
Exactly.
Maybe one Red Bull a night is all I need.
You're good to go.
Yeah. So
When you're shooting fish, Steve, go ahead.
Yeah. No, sorry. Carry on.
I was just going to say, when you're shooting fish in Africa, South America, do you need some kind of license? I mean, how do you know where to go? Are you shooting from a boat or bank shooting? Just give us a little bit of insight on that whole deal.
Okay. So, of course, different countries have different regs on all of this. The beauty of South America, in most countries, there's certain regulations, like in Argentina, you're not allowed to kill the fish called the golden dorado. But in a lot of the countries around the Amazon, there are Amerindian people, native people, who still bowfish to this day. So when we went to the Essequibo on this trip, every one of the fishing guides taking out people from around the world for rod and reel trips, all of those guides have a bow to shoot fish with.
No kidding.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah. So bow fishing is happening on a daily basis down in the Amazon.
Wow.
It's quite amazing how they do it. It's a relatively underpowered and relatively crude bow. I mean, some of the bows that were in the boats were literally just a branch with a paracord string.
Wow.
With a very long arrow, and
Yes.
they hardly pull it back. They only pull it back 10 or 12 inches. So they're almost putting this very long arrow up against the fish.
Yep.
Most of what they're shooting is pacu while they're in the rapids. And the pacu will actually bubble up, and they'll just come up in the rapids right to the surface near the boat. So while they're driving the boat in the back, they'll just hold this bow on their lap. And, it's a slip tip. It's amazing how little it takes to get the tiny little tip into the fish, because it pulls off that long arrow, and then it's attached to the arrow by a cord, and then the other end of the arrow is attached by a cord to the guy's wrist.
Okay.
Oh my gosh! Wow, interesting.
So they just put this little 1.5 inch long piece of steel with a little barb on the front into the pacu, and then it turns sideways, and they don't really need big barbs.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, when you watch them shoot it, I'm sure you could probably throw it harder than that bow is shooting.
No kidding.
And yet they still get a bunch of fish.
Sure. And they've been doing that forever.
In places, they've been doing it forever, for generations, thousands of years. So in places like Suriname and Guyana, bow fishing is totally legal, number one. And number two, there are no regulations on fish. In Guyana, there are some regulations on arapaima. They've now allowed local communities to allow the harvest, mostly from their own members, of that huge fish called the arapaima after years of protection.
Oh, yeah.
But in Suriname, there are no fish regulations. There are no licenses and no regulations because there are so few people in the country, and because people use it for subsistence, they just don't regulate it at all.
Wow.
Interesting.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow. No.
And then in other countries, like in Africa, South Africa, which is probably the most developed African country in Southern Africa, they actually have relatively strict laws.
Oh.
And in South Africa, you're allowed common carp, largemouth bass, tilapia, and sharp-toothed catfish, what they call the barbel catfish. And you're allowed bass because they're an invasive there.
No
Okay,
kidding.
Sure.
So amazingly, here there are precious game fish.
Yep.
There they're a pest.
Wow.
No kidding.
That's crazy.
And that's all you can shoot there in that area?
In South Africa, that's all you can shoot in freshwater. In saltwater, as far as I can tell, you could shoot anything that a spear fisherman can shoot.
Okay.
All right.
And then if you go north to a place like Zambia, you could shoot anything as well, because people still do quite a bit of, maybe not so much bow fishing, but they harvest fish with spears, with harpoons, with gigs, with nets. Yet again, there's very few regulations in places like that because people, they really can't regulate something that people are using to survive.
Right.
So, but when we go, like when we went to Guyana, we made it a point to try not to shoot more than one or two of each species.
Okay.
Only because we wanted to eat everything we shot.
Yep.
So we ate virtually everything we shot, including the electric eel, by the way.
Oh, wow.
We did eat the electric eel. One of my dream fish was the electric eel. And I have to tell you, they're bigger than you think. They're huge. I mean, you know, they're 6 feet long and as big around as your leg. And it's just wild. It's weird maybe about as big around as a calf. But it's wild to see an electric eel swimming around in the water.
Oh, my gosh.
And interestingly enough, most of the body, if you cut through the body of an electric eel, which I did preparing it for us to eat, there's only a little bit of what you'd call normal meat. And the rest of the body is this strange white tissue. And I guess that's sort of what it uses to generate the electricity. It's a huge giant organ which runs the length of the body of the electric eel.
Wow.
And when you cook it, it stays this sort of white jelly-like goo.
It sounds delicious, Steve.
No, it wasn't good. It was the only fish. Yeah, it was the only fish, and I make it a point to eat everything and at least try it because why are we shooting it just to they were going to use it as bait, where they used the rest of it as bait. So not a single thing we shot went to waste. But I found something sort of redeemable as to edibility, whether something is good to eat. Virtually all the fish were good in some way, except the electric eel. It just wasn't very good.
Yeah, he didn't sound very good.
But we ate all the rest: the arapaima, the payara, the vampire fish, peacock bass was fantastic. I shot silver drum, which is a lot like our freshwater drum. We ate the smaller fish, the bigger fish. We ate everything, and it was all pretty good, including the rip saw catfish. There's a catfish there with blades along the side of its body. It's one of the craziest fish you'll ever see.
Wow, we're going to have to look
at it. It has these huge hook-like blades in these big scales down. You wouldn't even be able to grab the thing at all. You'd end up, needing stitches in the hospital.
No kidding.
And that fish, interestingly enough, Jonathan Smith and I, he was my fishing partner on the trip, we filleted everything every night, and it came off dark red. It looked like tuna.
Oh, wow.
And we cooked it, and it even tasted like tuna.
Oh my
gosh. It tasted like a tuna steak.
Wow. Interesting.
And we were like, wow, this is crazy.
Well, Schmitty, that's going to wrap up part 1 interview with Steve Corrine.
Yep.
Episode 96 here on the Bowfishing Buzz. Yeah. You can listen to episode 97 on March 18th.
Yeah, next week.
Part 2.
Yeah, we'll do part 2
of Steve Corrine because we've got so much more to talk about there. This was just a little bit of a little tease
for everybody.
His bowfishing, his hunting, and some of the stuff, but he's got more stuff.
Something that happened to us here is that we've never had this happen before, but since this is going to be a 2-part podcast, towards the end of the filming of the podcast, we look over at our camera and the battery was dead.
Yes.
It was fully charged to boot. We've never had that happen before.
Done.
2+ hours of filming totally depletes the handy cam. That's pretty cool, though.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
Absolutely.
One thing about Steve, Matt, I think that's the kind of guy that you could sit around a campfire and just soak in the stories.
Absolutely.
Just listen. You could listen to talk for 5-6 hours.
Right.
And it sounds like he's got the stories to be able to talk for days.
Yeah.
I mean, 25 years in Africa, you probably got a lot of really cool adventures to talk about.
A professional hunter, a PH, a guide, all that stuff. Incredible.
When he said that he shot 250 species in my head, I'm like, wow, that's 240 more than probably what I've shot.
You can always hear somebody talk about shooting carp, buffs, snakeheads, stingrays, big heads, silvers, but you can't hear somebody talk about those type of species of fish.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
And
cool stuff.
You can hear that, Matt, in so much more than just bowfishing. Even when I talk to someone about hunting, you can tell the guys that are passionate about it. That really get it. They understand it. They know what they know what their goal is. They go out there with a purpose.
Yes.
Same thing with Steve.
Right.
So very cool.
Mm-hmm. All right, Schmitty, it's time for.
Ooh. All right, let's hear it.
Here we go.
Get ready for Fish That You Wish.
This fish comes to us out of a state that has more pigs and is the nation's top pork producer.
Nebraska.
This state also produces more corn than any other state, as 85% of the land is used for agriculture.
Oh, okay.
Because of this, whitetail bucks that call this state home are known as corn-fed giants.
Okay, now I got another state in mind.
I'm talking about the Hawkeye state of Iowa. This fish was shot June 11th, 2021 by Eric Mercer. With a length of 30.5 inches, this fancy quillback carp sucker knocked the scales at 11.58 pounds, making it the BAA world record.
Wow. 30 and how long was it, Matt? 30.5?
30.5 inch quilly.
That's a huge quilly.
Giant.
That right there is a fish you wish you shot. Wow.
Yep.
That's a tanker right there.
Yep.
I'm just trying to think what that would look like in the water. Good Lord.
Because the reason I brought that up, Schmitty, is because this is the time of year you got quillies like that fast current opening areas that are starting to open up,
cooler waters,
cooler waters, and we see a lot of them up here in the Midwest, anyways, quite a bit. Yep. And we're always shooting them. We're like, oh, that was a big quilly. Oh, that was a big quilly. Yeah. You know, a big fat one, and stuff, and you go put the scale on, it's like 7.
Yeah, right. And that's a big
6, 8, maybe, 9. 11.58, 30.5 inches. That's awesome. A big quilly.
That's cool. That's a cool fish you wish.
Wow. Also, don't forget to check out AMS Bowfishing Below the H2O Season 4.
Carbon TV,
Season
baby.
4 already.
Carbon TV.
Totally
free to sign up.
Totally free.
Email password. You've got exclusive access to
watch it right here.
All kinds of amazing shows on Carbon.
Our episode 1 of Season 4 was just aired here this past Saturday. Boise Butterfly Schmitty.
Trip. Just a really cool trip.
And our next one will be out Saturday, April 12th.
Ooh.
What do you think the title of that one is?
Okay, title-wise for that one,
you and I were filming this one together.
Okay, then I'm going to say it took place in Wisconsin.
Yes.
And I'm going to say that there's going to be some buffs or some commons being shot.
Yes.
Final answer is going to be it's a buff episode.
Yes.
All right, there we go. Not sure on the title.
Chasing the Push.
Ooh, Chasing the Push.
Chasing the Push. That's
awesome.
like Schmitty running around chasing the girls.
Okay. You're comparing me to a small little male buffalo pushing up against big females?
Well, you do need to do that, I think.
Oh, my goodness. Bringing my single life up once again. Okay, all right. Chasing the Push.
Yepper. Also, Schmitty, before we came up and did the podcast, I just got a phone call from Gallus Marine. Ooh. Our boat has been gone through. We're all good to go. We had him put some new plugs in. We had her checked over for anything that might have been wrong.
Oh, look at that. He's getting nervous.
We talk about the boat. He's getting flippy back here.
Yep. For our audio listeners, our little mounted replica carp just tipped over.
We talked about the boat, and he started his head tipped forward.
Yep. He's trying to get away.
That's pretty cool right there.
Yep.
What a great podcast, Schmitty.
Absolutely. Very
first
cool.
half of Steve Corrine, and there's more to come. March 18th. Part 2, episode 97.
Yep. Be on the lookout
something
for
like that. I can't remember what that is.
Yep. We do so many
right now. My gosh. Schmitty, before we go, make sure that your boat is ready before you dump it in the water. Check your batteries, your battery connections, bilge pumps, navigation lights, interior lights. Make sure your fire extinguisher flares are up to date. Water pump is working. Trailer lights are working properly. Check those wheel bearings, change the oil under phantom motors and everything else.
Those are all very important, but there's one thing you're missing.
I got one left here, Schmitty.
Okay.
And for heaven's sakes, make sure to put your boat plug in before you put the boat in the water.
Yes. You do not need Schmitty going up to his nipples in the water to keep water from coming in the boat. Put the plug in. Absolutely.
And your phone died on you.
Yes.
Too.
Also, pre-register for the Big 20, people.
Oh, yes. Absolutely.
We want to see you here.
We want to see you here. We want to see your boats. We want to see you come and have fun with us.
Absolutely.
May 17th and 18th. So from all of us here at AMS Bowfishing and
Megamouth Bowfishing as well, and our fantastic sponsors, and Designs, Embroidery and Leatherwork, Efficiency Bowfishing Lights by Outdoor Innovations USA. Thank you to them so much. Another pod in the books.
I can't do it. I got my microphone in my face here. Thank you so much for joining us. From all of us here at Amos Bowfishing, we wish you the best of luck. And remember, aim low.
Think big. Thanks for listening, guys.